For over 1,000 years, Rome was the bedrock of Western civilization. Its legions conquered the known world. Its engineers built roads and aqueducts that defied time, and its laws shaped the very definition of governance. To live under the shadow of the eagle was to believe in eternity. Today, we look back and ask the ultimate historical question: why did Rome fall? Was it a sudden, decisive blow or a slow, agonizing decay? Was it lead poisoning, Christianity, or simply too many barbarians at the gate? The truth is far more complex. The fall of Rome wasn't one single event. It was a perfect storm of 5 interconnected disasters. This is the mystery of how the greatest empire the world had ever seen collapsed under its own weight. The Roman military, the very machine that built the empire, became the first source of its systemic failure. By the 4th century, the legions were stretched dangerously thin. The long, fortified borders along the Rhine and the Danube were under relentless pressure from migrating Germanic tribes, the Goths, the Vandals, the Franks. But Rome made a fateful decision. To save money and manpower, they began allowing large groups of these so-called barbarians to settle within the imperial borders, under the condition that they would serve in the Roman army. These groups, known as foederati, were supposed to be Rome's shield. They became the dagger. These foreign armies were loyal to their tribal leaders, not to Rome. When the Visigoths, led by Alaric, were mistreated by corrupt Roman officials, they revolted. In 378 AD, at the Battle of Adrianople, the Gothic cavalry decimated a Roman army and killed Emperor Valens himself. This defeat was not just a loss of life, it was a fatal loss of military prestige. It showed the barbarians that Rome was beatable. The Roman legions were no longer a disciplined force of Roman citizens. They were now expensive, mutinous mercenaries, fighting less for the glory of the eagle and more for their next paycheck. The empire was being defended by the very people who would eventually conquer it. The external threat was only matched by the internal decay of its fighting force. War is expensive. Maintaining an empire of that size, with its vast road networks, aqueducts, and colossal army, was cripplingly expensive. The Roman economy was structured on conquest, bringing in gold, slaves, and resources. When the empire stopped expanding in the 2nd century, the revenue dried up, but the expenses soared. To fund their armies and their extravagant lifestyles, Roman emperors resorted to a desperate measure: debasing the coinage. They reduced the silver content in the denarius coin, replacing it with cheaper metals like copper and bronze. This act was essentially mass counterfeiting by the state. The inevitable result was devastating hyperinflation. A loaf of bread that once cost 1 denarius soon cost 50. Trade withered, and people returned to a barter system. Peasants, unable to pay their crushing taxes in worthless currency, abandoned their farms and fled to the protection of powerful landowners. This destroyed the small independent farmer, the historical backbone of the Roman Republic. The imperial treasury was empty, the tax base had collapsed, and the vast, intricate network of Roman commerce was choking on its own worthless money. The economic engine of the West had sputtered and died. The political system of the later empire was a tragedy of ambition and incompetence. Between 235 AD and 284 AD, the empire endured the crisis of the 3rd century, where 26 different emperors ruled, and all but one died a violent death. They were soldiers, not statesmen, constantly vying for power. This perpetual civil war bled the treasury
and diverted resources from the frontiers. The average reign lasted barely 2 years. There was no long-term planning, only short-term survival. The focus shifted from defending the state to bribing the army, known as the Praetorian Guard, to secure the throne.
Emperors like Diocletian and Constantine attempted radical reforms. Diocletian split the empire into two halves, east and west, to make it governable. Constantine moved the capital to Constantinople. While this preserved the Eastern Empire for another 1,000 years, it symbolized the final abandonment of the West.
The Western Emperor became a puppet, often controlled by ambitious military commanders, usually of barbarian origin, like the powerful Vandal Stilicho. When the imperial title became meaningless, the institutions of Rome, the Senate, the courts, the bureaucracy, began to atrophy. The people, seeing their rulers constantly overthrown and unable to protect them, lost faith in the very idea of Rome. Beneath the political chaos and economic ruin, Roman society itself was fracturing. The vast difference between the wealthy elite, Honasterios, and the impoverished masses, Humilios, became an unbridgeable chasm. The rich retreated to their enormous self-sufficient estates, latifundia, isolating themselves from the crumbling cities. This drained the vitality and tax base of urban centers like Rome. Public services, once the pride of the empire, broke down. The famous Roman roads fell into disrepair, crippling the military's ability to respond quickly to threats. The great aqueducts, which supplied clean water, were neglected. Sanitation collapsed. Plagues and disease, exacerbated by the poor living conditions, ravaged the population, further reducing the army's recruitment pool and the state's tax base. The famous bread and circuses, the state's policy of keeping the urban poor content with free grain and public games, became unsustainable. When the grain ships from North Africa stopped arriving due to Vandal incursions, the poor realized the empire could no longer fulfill its basic promise of security and sustenance. The Roman citizen had become apathetic. The empire was no longer worth saving. The end was not a bang, but a bureaucratic whimper. The date widely accepted as the fall is September 4th, 476 AD. On this day, the young Western Roman Emperor Romulus Augustulus was deposed by the barbarian general Odoacer. Odoacer didn't destroy Rome. He simply sent the imperial regalia, the crown, the robe, and the scepter, to the Eastern Emperor and Constantinople. He essentially said, there's no longer a need for a Western emperor. The people barely noticed. For decades, the Western Empire had been a title without a kingdom, a corpse sustained by wishful thinking. The fall of Rome was a complex 5-act tragedy. A military structure weakened by mercenaries, an economy destroyed by inflation, a political system consumed by ambition, and a society fractured by inequality and neglect. It was a failure of adaptation. But the mystery remains. Rome never truly died. Its legacy lived on in the laws of the church, the language of the scholars, and the dreams of every subsequent European empire. The Western Roman Empire may have collapsed, but its shadow still stretches across the entire modern world. What is your theory? Do you think lead poisoning played a bigger role? Or was it Christianity that changed Rome forever? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed deep dives into world history, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss another global history tale. Watch our next video